Tulips are one of my favorite spring flowers, and growing them in pots or raised beds makes them even more rewarding. Not only do they bring vibrant colors to any space, but they also allow for better control over soil conditions, drainage, and placement. Whether you have a small garden or just a patio, you can still enjoy the beauty of tulips. I'll take you through everything you need to know, from selecting the right bulbs to post-bloom care, so you can have a stunning tulip display year after year. The foundation of beautiful tulips starts with choosing the right bulbs. I always go for large, firm bulbs with no soft spots or mold. The bigger the bulb, the stronger the bloom. When selecting varieties, I like to mix early, mid, and late season tulips to extend the bloom time. If you're growing tulips in pots, shorter varieties like Grey G or Kaufmanniana work well, while raised beds can accommodate taller varieties like Darwin hybrids or Triumph tulips. Timing is crucial for tulip planting. I plant my tulips in the fall, about 6 to 8 weeks before the first hard frost. This ensures they get the necessary chilling period to bloom in spring. If you live in a warmer climate, you'll need to pre-chill your bulbs in the fridge for 10 to 12 weeks before planting. For pots, I use containers at least 12 inches deep with drainage holes. I fill them with high-quality potting mix and plant the bulbs with their pointed ends up, around 6 inches deep. I like to plant them close together for a fuller look, but still leave some space for airflow. One trick I love is the lasagna method, where I layer bulbs at different depths so they bloom in waves, creating a long-lasting display. In raised beds, I prepare the soil by adding compost for nutrients, and ensuring good drainage by mixing in some sand or perlite if necessary. I plant bulbs 6 inches deep and space them about 4 to 6 inches apart. For a more natural look, I scatter the bulbs randomly rather than planting them in strict rows. Once planted, I give them a good watering to help them settle in before winter. Tulips are hardy, but I always take precautions to protect them over winter. In pots, I move them to a sheltered area, or even bury the pots in the ground for insulation. If you get severe winters, a layer of mulch like shredded leaves or straw helps keep the bulbs from extreme temperature fluctuations. Critters like squirrels can be a problem, so I often place a wire mesh over the soil until shoots start emerging in spring. Sprinkling crushed red pepper flakes or using a natural repellent can also deter pests. Tulips don't need much water during their dormant winter period, but as soon as the shoots appear in spring, I start checking the moisture levels. I water them when the soil feels dry, but always avoid overwatering, as tulip bulbs hate sitting in soggy soil. For fertilizing, I apply a balanced slow-release fertilizer when the shoots first emerge. If I didn't add compost when planting, I also feed them with a liquid bulb fertilizer as they begin to bloom. Healthy leaves mean strong bulbs for the next season, so I make sure they get enough nutrients to recharge. To extend the tulip bloom period, I mix different varieties that bloom at different times. Keeping potted tulips in a cool, partially shaded spot once they start flowering can also slow down the fading process. When flowers begin to fade, I deadhead them by snipping off the spent blooms. This prevents the plant from wasting energy on seed production and instead redirects it toward the bulb for next year. Once the tulip flowers have faded, it's important to leave the foliage intact until it turns yellow and dies back naturally. The leaves absorb energy and send nutrients back into the bulb for the next growing season. I resist the urge to cut them back too soon, as this can lead to weak or non-existent blooms the following year. If I'm growing tulips as annuals, which is common in pots, I dig up the bulbs after the foliage has died back, and replace them with fresh bulbs in the fall. In raised beds, I leave the bulbs in the ground, but I make sure to plant them in well-draining soil and fertilize them after flowering to encourage reblooming. One of the biggest challenges with tulips is getting them to rebloom consistently. Some varieties, especially hybrid tulips, tend to weaken after the first year. If I notice my tulips producing smaller flowers or not returning at all, I switch to more perennial types like Darwin hybrids or species tulips, which tend to naturalize better. Pests like aphids can sometimes be an issue, but I usually just spray them off with water or use insecticidal soap if necessary. Fungal diseases such as botrytis, tulip fire, can be prevented by ensuring good airflow and keeping foliage dry. There's something truly special about tulips emerging after a long winter. Whether I grow them in pots or raised beds, they never fail to bring color and joy to my space. The best part is experimenting with different varieties and planting techniques to create stunning displays year after year. If you've enjoyed this guide, be sure to subscribe to Hydro Haven for more gardening tips and inspiration. Share this with fellow gardeners so they can enjoy the beauty of tulips too.